allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Glad to have each one of you here this evening. Just make an introduction tonight. Glad to have our attorney, Manny Hersick, with us, and your colleague, Mr. Lee. So appreciate you gentlemen attending tonight's meeting. So we'll move on tonight. The first order of business is a public hearing for our 2018 budget adoption. So Robin, if you'll read over this for us, please.
This will be adopted on Tuesday, October 10th at 7 p.m. Our estimated max levy is $135,353. Rainy day fund, that budget estimate $7,000. General fund $359,363. Local roads and streets $45,000. Motor vehicle highway $65,000. Lower special distribution, which is that paving money that we got the one-time distribution, $58,610 for a total of $534,973. Our current levy is $130,176. And this is just what we're telling the DLGF we feel like we need in order to function properly. And they'll tell us no. So we may do it differently next year. She's getting kind of aggravated with me for inflating it up front, so we may fine tune it a little more next year. We'll see. And then I think I sent y'all an email that we need to sit down and kind of go over our budget together for next year.
Is that something we can do in a meeting, or we need to schedule a special meeting?
How do we do a workshop?
Yeah, you can do a working session.
Working
But
session.
it doesn't have to be noticed publicly.
Right.
That's good. That's what we do. We get lunch and we just we notice it, but then we just sit in here and hash it out. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So if no one has any questions,
Are there any questions tonight in regards to the 2018 budget? All right then, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is the approval of our minutes from the previous meeting. You have those in front of you. If you'd like to note any additions or corrections.
I make a motion to accept it.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to our reports tonight. Andy, if you'll give your report, please.
All right, the water plant treated 793,330 gallons since our September 12th meeting. Our daily average over the last 2 weeks, and I had a couple typos there, was 56,600. Our average daily usage almost doubled during the festival. Filters were backwards from September 13th, 19th, and 25th. The water meter's been read for the month of September, and September water report has been submitted to IDEM. Watson Excavating has been mobilizing this week and are having more materials delivered over the next few days, and they are stockpiling sand at the water plant and are going to actually start putting pipe in the ground this coming Monday. But we got a lot of stuff out there and they're getting ready to hit the ground running. Wastewater been performing daily checks at the lift station and the sewer plant, and pump 2 has been tripping the mini cast. That's a controller for the pump, and the pump may be developing a leak. I'm going to watch it, but if it is, it's going to have to be rebuilt, and it'll have to go in. We don't have the tools. They take special tools to tear down a flat pump, and I just wanna prep you guys for it, because it's gonna be in the it'll be probably in the 8,000 range to tear that pump down and service it. I mean, it would be the first time since it was installed, but I'm just gonna see how, it's tripped out twice now and reset, but if it fails all the way, the pump just won't run, and then we'll be down to one pump. But probably if we have to, what I'll do, even though it's not a great pump, but it does pump, I still have one of the old pumps out of the lift station that needs to be rebuilt. It does run, it's just at a lower capacity, but it would keep us from paying $500, rentals $500 a day. And they'll probably have this thing for 10 or 12 days, so if it does go bad, my plan is to pull the old pump, pull the new pump that's in there out, and throw the old one in, and have Xylem come pick it up and get it rebuilt, but I'll let you know if something happens with it. But I'm afraid it's gonna go down. And sewer plant's closed, we're not discharging. Stream flow is slower than our meter will even measure right now. So we're gonna have to get some rain, get that thing going. We can only discharge 10% of stream flow, which right now is 0. We're not getting any reading on that thing. And I've checked it, it is working. It's just the stream's not moving. It's the dry weather. The weekly sewer samples are complete. We repaired one stormwater catch basin. And I've applied the last treatment to the ponds for the season, and the red algae is going away. I just put the last application in today, so hopefully that'll do it for us. On the streets, we cleaned up most of the Mesmer Festival, but still have a few things to do. All barricade, street signs, and banners have been removed. The dumpster was removed today, and I've contacted Mahoney's to have the grease trap out here emptied. It's just about full, so we're gonna be sending someone out for that. We did not get our paving grant. There was a mistake on our application, and we're gonna have to reapply for the next grant round. Our engineers did not submit the map of the town, so we were disqualified from the grant process. It was an electronic filing, and he submitted our asset management plan twice and didn't click on the right folder to attach the map. So that was
Jennifer's on that.
a $240,000 loss for us. Everyone around us got financed. I would think that if our application had been correct, we would have also.
I spoke with Jim yesterday, and he was to check to see exactly what happened, and then Robin received a call yesterday from NDOT stating that there was a mistake on the application. So our engineers kind of let us down there.
Not on this part, I forgot to list on here, I had one loose dog, and I was able to locate the home, take him home. And so everybody knows, on the festival electrical problem this weekend, where our food vendors east of the tracks were out of power, it was not anything to do with us. It was a transformer that was extremely old. When I talked to Jeff Redner, I think it was the one that was up here, it was a 5 kilovolt transformer, which they don't use anymore. He said it should have been a 25, and they put a 50 back on it, but they had to go south to get one because they didn't have it. But it was a Duke problem and not our problem. And under building, we had 1 zoning inquiry, 2 inquiries about variances, another about a building permit, and then I have 2 applications that we'll be issuing permits for. All I have, unless there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Andy. Murray?
11 written notices issued, 8 tickets, and 1 chicken inspection performed. That's all I've got, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. All right. Robin, did you have anything additional?
I do not.
This evening? All right, Okay,
longer.
that's all right. We have our report from our fire chiefs this evening, so Jerry, if you would like to.
Well, our in-service date, again, our target date is December the 28th, which is a little over 2 months away. We've got a lot of things to get accomplished in that. Number one is, in order for paperwork and for me to get things, we need to start thinking about what we're gonna do with EMS in the town, figure out which direction you wanna go. I've got run cards I need to complete for the, down at the county at dispatch. They want me in some of those to go 30 stations deep. I think I mentioned that the last time. About 3 weeks ago, I submitted to the state to get our FDID number reinstated. I had an email back this morning. I left some things off of that application, so I'll work on that next couple of days, get that resubmitted. At the time, I only had 3 members, so I put the 3 members on there and told her that I only had 3 members. And she sent me an email back this morning, she needs the whole roster. So, and I'll address that here in a little bit. One of the things that was discussed over the weekend, when you get other fire departments coming in to help you, we sit around and we talk a lot, but to be grant eligible, this department's probably going to have to do a 501c3 down the road. It's not nothing that needs to happen right now, but if there's, especially if we start doing fundraising or something like that to raise money, we'll have to have that. And it may still be there from the, but I doubt it. So, still looking into what paperwork we need to submit for to make the department BLS non-transport. I do have some good news. We are going to have our first organizational meeting October the 19th, which is Thursday. It's a Thursday night, and I would like if maybe one town board member to be there at that meeting. So that's just something to think about. And our membership numbers right now, we stand at 11 members. So, coming with that 11 members is, as you know, we only have 6 good sets of gear. We've got 4 sets that are expired, which we can use. We can put those individuals in training as long as it's not interior training. So if it's something we can do outside, we can actually, if that gear fits somebody, we can put them in there, but we can't use them. Once we go live and in service, then we can't use that for inside interior attacks or anything like that. But, okay, the Earth Festival, as we all know, it was kind of hot over the weekend. We went through about 8 cases of water trying to get or keep our people, especially the emergency personnel down there, hydrated. We also went through about 8 cases of Gatorade, and we used about 200 pounds of ice. We had an ambulance both days staffed by Cicero Township, which is up in Tipton County. Our smokehouse that Jennifer and Robin brought into town was staffed by Cicero Township and Wildcat Township junior firefighters. And I got a lot of positive comments out of that. During the festival, we had 1 ALS cart, 3 BLS carts, 1 fire cart, 2 grass units on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and an engine crew both days staffed. One of the things right prior to the Earth Festival, we attempted to charge the batteries on the EMS cart down there at the station, and it took a charge, but it wouldn't hold a charge. So then we started checking to see if the charger was. So we ended up having to put new batteries in the golf cart. So those batteries were about we were guessing between 6 and 8 years old. So it was probably time. Regarding the radios, I still have not gotten any confirmation that the county has received any type of written letter, email, or anything regarding the owners or the switch of the ownership of those radios. And that's, again, that's something that needs to happen. Or the other option is we just give them back their radios and we purchase our own radios through the county through a lease. I don't have any costs on that, but Hamilton County stepped up and donated a reconditioned desktop computer for the station. That's been installed. They also give us a laptop kiosk computer to be used for radio programming, so whenever they push out programming updates for those radios, all you have to do is set the radio on the desk, hook it up, push a button, and it automatically updates those radios. If we want to go to the engine, they're actually going to make us like a 100-foot cord. It'll go off that laptop, because that laptop has to stay hardwired all the time. So again, that was all. Those items were done at no cost. They also gave us a mobile data terminal, which is also known as an MDT. That'll go in the engine. We're still looking for a mount for that. There will be some cost to that because once it's, and I think I mentioned this last time, once it's sitting in the station, it'll be connected to Wi-Fi, but once it leaves the station, it'll need an air card. Station alerting system's back up and going. Everything was good on the test. Again, thanks to the county on that. They supplied all the wiring at no cost. Did all the installation for us. The station received free Comcast Cablevision through Comcast. They gave us three free cable boxes. We've used 2 of them. You know, the last meeting you authorized spending a little money on the defibrillators we had down there, but we did not spend that money because those units are so old, it probably wouldn't have done any good. So we, again, the county stepped up and loaned us 2 brand new defibrillators to be used during the festival. They've also given us a contact where there's probably a pretty good chance we can get 2 donated to the town. And then we're also still working with Riverview Hospital Foundation to also see if they'll donate defibrillators. On the apparatus and equipment, again, sitting around on Saturday, I was asked the question when the last time the engine had a pump test certification, and I don't know, and that's something that has to be done every year, I believe, and so I'll check into that and report back later. I also have shared that the printer that came back from down south is junk, so I had to come up here and make some copies. The microwave that came back would not work. We will probably have to, here in the near future, look about making the back of the engine and the front of the engine NFPA compliant, or NFA standard 1901 compliant. And that has to do with reflective striping on that engine. It has striping now, but that engine was built in 2007 and it's not compliant. And I think our insurance, when we do go live or in service, I think that will help our insurance. I think Andy, I think your truck has it on the back since you're classified as a emergency vehicle. You've got.
Yeah, Jerry Kelly did mine.
Okay.
He did a gold leaf on that truck. Get you his number, so if
okay.
he's never seen, you can call him.
The other thing I've been told is missing, and we need to get this back. The department had a portable projector that attached to a laptop for like PowerPoint presentations, and I can't find it anywhere. I guess it's down south, so we'll need to get that back. It should have stayed here, but I think it's went south. That's all I have, unless you guys have some questions for me.
You say you need a laptop, man, for a vehicle? You might have one from the police car.
Okay.
I'll have to dig around and see.
Okay.
But I think we
Well, Ryan was going to check, but he didn't know he had any left.
I'll look tomorrow and see if there is one, bring it over and put it in the fire station.
So if anybody have any questions?
I have a question, Jerry.
Sure.
In working with Todd, have you guys looked at that inventory sheet? Have you laid your eyes on that yourself?
Yeah.
documents I gave you last time, all the, yeah.
That was done after everything came back. I've been told that there's one that was done prior or before the divorce. I'd like to get my hands on that, and I think I'm gonna get my hands on that.
Okay.
That would be interesting
That's
to
gonna
see,
be very
compare.
Well, yeah, right, to see what
It's
they
gonna be
gave us
very
versus what
important.
we,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
In this whole entire process.
and I think, and I'm gonna throw this out there, we need to put this to bed with the territory, and we need to meet with them, and we just need to figure out, get them to the table and do something. Because it's, I think, if we don't do that, it's going to be hard moving on, to be very honest. I mean, so, and I don't know if you agree with that or not, but it's just,
Yeah, I mean, getting that inventory list, because it was my impression with Todd, he was just supposed to pick up the stuff. They had it all together, and he was supposed to pick it up, and somewhere along the line, something happened where he didn't get to it, but I agree, I think we need to re-engage him in some way.
I went with Todd, but I went with him to help him, but we only got part of it.
Right,
Yeah.
but then, the idea was he and the chief at the time were supposed to then work together to get the rest of the stuff sewn up, and that never
and
happened.
I think
So
some of that
that's my
came
problem.
back, but
Some
I'm
of
not.
it came back, but not
not
all,
all of
because
it.
they didn't keep the
And
conversation.
there's stuff down there, I think, can go back to them, that that they haven't picked up either. So we need to sit down and,
Yeah, once you get that inventory list, I think that'll be important.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get my hands on
What
that.
they gave Todd, we wanna make sure that they didn't leave anything off, and that, conversely, Todd didn't leave anything off, in his request.
so.
I don't know if that'll ever happen, Jerry. We have tried numerous times, and since this thing has dissolved, and they will not cooperate. And like you say, you've come up with about $70,000 to $80,000 worth of equipment that belongs to us, and then, just listening to you here, there's more things that belong to the town. That's even, the list just keeps growing, and I don't think we're ever gonna get anywhere with them, and that's why I still say we need to put this in front of the court and let the judge. Either we request they give us our stuff back, or we file a theft report or something. It's our equipment. And if we have an inventory list that said it was ours before we went into this territory, to me, it's theft whenever they have it and will not return it. And I don't see this town having the money to put you guys in service December 28th with no equipment, no gear, and the town don't have the budget. If we ain't got the money to go in front of a judge to request this, we sure ain't got the money to get you the gear and equipment. And just to get you, in your gear, the equipment you need, the radios and everything, and then we have no budget for you to operate on, even if we were to come up with money to put you in the equipment you need.
Well, the radios, like I say, the radios were turned back on right before, well, about a week before the festival. And we were able to update those and use those over the festival. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not turned back off after, because again, we don't own them. So,
I can see that happening.
Do you think we have a better chance of having a good conversation about that equipment now that there's a different chief?
don't know. You gotta think
Give it a
you gotta
try.
think who the chief's working for.
Right.
Nothing's changed as far as who's in charge down there, so he's working under them, so I don't see that anything's gonna be a bit different than it has been for the last year and a half, 2 years. And I think the longer we wait, the worse it's gonna be, and just like Jerry said right there, we need to consider what we're gonna do with EMS. Are we gonna sign a contract with them again? Are we gonna pay them the full amount? Are we just gonna keep going like this and never get our department back up and running? We had an department before this territory ever started, and we had good relations with everybody in the county and everything, and ever since this thing has started, we're the ones with a nice department sitting there without any equipment operated. And equipment just keeps deteriorating, sitting there because it's not in service, it's not being used, and next is gonna be the truck. We're gonna end up having to buy a truck to keep the department going. You know, and it's like, where are we gonna come up with the money here if we, trying to equip them with everything that we already have missing? And I just don't understand why there's no money to get a judge, to get in front of a judge. Not a full-blown lawsuit, but get it in front of a judge, to get a judge to interpret that contract, interpret what we have. To me, there's a lot of money out there that belongs to this town, I believe, and I don't know that anybody's ever even asked I've asked numerous times to get this thing, so we have an audit done of the fire territory budget and assets, and I keep getting shot down. I don't know why, other than there's no money, we don't want to sue, we can't file suit, and, you know, I don't think we're ever gonna get anything back, and we need to either do something with this, or we need to just let them have what we got, and then skimp and scrape and do whatever we can without finances to even operate on, and just keep paying them. I mean, that's basically what we're doing. That's what, you know, we were in better shape before we ever went into that territory, in my opinion. We had assistance from we had interlocal agreements, we had, you know, communities that supported and come up here on the ALS and everything else, and now because they got us behind the 8 ball, you know, basically we're forcing us to pay them for something that we shouldn't be, and keeping our equipment to do it, and we're paying them on a contract, and they're using our equipment that belongs to the town of Atlanta, and we're having to pay them. And I tell you, I'm not very happy about the whole thing. I've sat on that fire territory board, and I know what took place. I know there's a lot of money that was spent that I feel it shouldn't have been spent out of the territory budget that needs to be looked at. I know that the ALS runs that generated funds to the territory was about 10 or 11,000 in there, and whenever the territory dissolved, it was 300,000 or over in there. That is to me, should be split in some manner or another, and then all the equipment and all the assets that were bought. There's a new vehicle bought, there's a used vehicle bought. They all got all that stuff. They got all of our equipment. I just can't see the board sitting here not wanting to do anything, and there's, you know, everybody's making a judgment call, in my opinion, without knowing the facts or the details or what we have to personally lose. Everybody pretty much is, we don't have the money to sue, but nobody ever actually has went through this budget, looked at our budget, seen where we could come up with money to file for suit.
I didn't say we don't have the money to sue. I said it'll burn up all our money, and then we're taking a big gamble that we're gonna spend all that money to sue and then still lose in court and be left with nothing to fund our fire department.
Well, I mean, I heard a figure from Manny that was 25 to 40,000 at one meeting I sat in, and then the last meeting you sat here, that Manny had his budget thing, now it's 60 to 80.
60 to 80.
Now, I don't know why that doubled from
Well,
2 months ago.
Hold on a minute, it's the same budget, and if you looked at it, that was in tiers. So 60 to 80 is the outside of it, and it's for the whole lawsuit, all the way through a hearing, through testimony, through experts, getting Jim involved to figure out exactly what happened. And 25 to 40 is to get it through the process where we file suit, get all the information that we need, because it's all great to sit in front of a judge and talk about this stuff, but he's not gonna believe anything we have to say unless we have proof of what actually happened. And we have somebody like Jim who can talk about how the finances worked and what the town contributed and what was joint territory property and what wasn't. And on top of that, the 25 to 40 number was to get it through mediation, which the judge will probably order. So those numbers are, if you pull the budget again, you'll see they went through tiers. This is what it will cost at this point, this is what it will cost if you go all the way through. So it's not the numbers are inflated or doubled or whatever, it's just, there are stages of it, there's a range that I put forward. That didn't change from one meeting to another, that was the budget I submitted.
When we discussed over that, this is what pretty much that I understood was it was 25 to 40,000 when we set over the fire territory with me, you and Jennifer, or Robin sitting over there, and that was when I was insisting that we file all suit, and that was the number you said that it could cost us, and we may not even have $40,000 coming to us, depending on what how they divided it, whether it was a third, or how they did it per tax
We
levy.
also said that
So,
didn't include experts.
That's right.
and,
But I submitted one
But,
budget, you guys have it, you can look at it. The numbers, it's a range, and so, yeah, it's gonna fall into that range.
Yeah, this is a budget that was submitted to the public meeting here to you guys. These other ones were meetings that you guys didn't attend, and it's more information that the council is unaware of that's even taking place, or conversations and everything else. So, you know, you guys don't really have the information to even make a logical decision or understand what's really going on and what we have to lose.
We talked about everything that we talked about in the fire station, we talked about in that executive session that we had with Manny 2 weeks ago.
No, there's been a lot of discussion.
Probably shouldn't be talking about
Because it's
right now.
privilege, and so to the extent you wanna waive that privilege, you can talk about it here, otherwise I recommend you do it in executive session.
executive session can't be discussed, you can't record it, and nobody knows what's going on. And I think we owe it to this community and the residents of town to know what's happening with our fire territory and our ALFs. They're concerned about not having protection in this town. I've sat on the board and I've heard it. I heard about it at the fire territory. I've heard the arguments back and forth, and everybody's concerned about it. And that's the problem. Everybody wants to have executive sessions and sit behind closed doors where nobody knows or hears a thing about what's going on with the community. And we're sitting up here as a board, supposed to be representing these people, and nobody wants to say a word. You know, I don't agree with that. We're not talking about anything that pertains to the lawsuit. We're talking about the things that they have and what we need to get back. You know, when we get into an actual lawsuit, if we ever were to do that, it'd be a totally different story. You'd have to sit down and talk about issues that you don't want to know, or the township or whatever. But right now, I just don't understand it, not at all.
But there's risks that are involved that we talked about in our executive session that we can't talk about publicly because that exposes us if we talk about those risks.
Well, you know what? One of the problems we have here right now is the state of confusion this board is in. The state where no one wants to share information with anybody. It was only 2 or 3 days ago that I was informed there was even a meeting at the fire station. And by the way, I wasn't invited. And it wasn't brought up till the last board meeting. No one related what was said over there or anything else. This is all new stuff to me. So if the right hand doesn't want to tell the left hand what's going on, you know what? You're asking for trouble. And there can't, and I can't sit up here and make a legitimate decision about something if I don't have all the facts. And all I'm saying is I want to be involved. That's all. I want to be involved. But that's part of my job. And I insist on it from now on. This backdoor politics stuff with me is going to stop.
Everything that was talked about at the fire station was talked about in that executive session Tuesday. And after we had that meeting.
Why wasn't I informed you even had a meeting up there? Before. I wouldn't get to receive no phone call. No, I didn't. Don't put words in my mouth.
I remember specifically standing over here talking to you about it.
I remember you telling me at the executive meeting how, when we talked about the fact that we've already voted on what we were going to do about the trustee's office. It was a unanimous decision. That was stopped a long time ago. Okay, that was stopped by one person, and he's sitting right here.
Aaron never filed it.
He was still told to stop it. And furthermore, I remember during that meeting that you spoke in a very verbal, loud way that I was going to be the cause of this town going bankrupt. And I told you probably that I felt like some of the possible reasons I felt that way is because I haven't been involved in a lot of information that you've been privy to through this man right here that I haven't even been included in. This is my 3rd time that I have met this lawyer.
And that
The
is,
first time I met him, he refused to even talk to me about the territory.
and that is why
But he talks, you know, listen, I've got some bad feelings about this.
And that is why we sat down in that executive session Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, and talked about everything that we've talked about it.
And let me just, that's not true, first of all. Second of all, the first time I met all of you, you all have my email, you all have my phone number. I said, do you want me to go through all of you? Do you want me to communicate through Robin? And he said, go ahead and communicate through Robin. If we have anything, we'll call or email you.
Well, that's another
I'm
issue
not
right
closed
there,
off
Manny.
against
I wasn't
anybody.
asked.
And then I
I
asked
wasn't
you, Manny,
informed
in here
about
after
that.
all this took place, I asked you sitting right there if you would mind contacting or emailing, copying us on all your emails. You told me that would not be a problem. Sitting right here at the meeting after this started in.
Right,
And,
and when
and
you-
Toby, it was after the meeting that you stood there and told Toby that you would not talk to him about the fire territory because it was confidential. You could not talk to him.
Yes, sir, you
And-
certainly did, right
And Toby
straight
was
in
mad
my
at me
face.
because
Yes,
you
sir.
walked in the kitchen to talk to me, and he thought you were talking to me about something that he
No,
wanted
I
to ask
said
you, and
we
you
couldn't
would not
talk
talk about it.
We couldn't talk about public matters where there were 4 of you standing in the same room where it wasn't noticed because it's a
You
violation of the open door
specifically
law. That's why I
named
couldn't talk to you
the
about it.
territory.
That's why I couldn't talk to you about it.
You didn't ask me what I want to talk about. I told you what I want to talk about.
Right.
And I said the territory. And you said, I cannot talk to you about this territory.
That's right, because there were 4 of you in the room, which constitutes a quorum, which violates the open door law. And in addition to that, all these emails that we've been seeing from everybody, copying the whole council, is problematic. Because you're sharing public information outside of a meeting to the whole council and asking them to make decisions on the orange contract, on everything else.
No, who asked to make a decision on anything? All I have done is shared my information, which you told us to get everybody's input together and let everybody comment, put their suggestions and recommendations together, and you would take that information and get the draft
Yeah, I
contract.
told you to email.
That's what we've done.
And then
I've
recently,
never asked.
last week, you said we had to terminate. You sent that to
No,
everybody.
I sent that, I said, that you wanna read it? I got a copy of it, and I'll share it with everybody sitting here. I said, as I have said I would, here is my recommendations and reasons for pertaining to the contract for lease of the property located at 795 South Central. Send Orange the 90-day written notice of termination per contract, section 13 for breach of contract. I didn't say I want you guys to vote on this. This is mine. I said, this is my
You're saying
comments.
it's
And
problematic.
why is it
You said it should
problematic?
be tied
Because
forward.
my council members know where I stand, because I'm not gonna hide and talk about this behind. I'll share any of this stuff. Pam sent me some emails that pertain to town business. I shared them with everybody. I was not told not to. She didn't ask me to, and I shared them. And there's been a lot of emails going back and forth. Same as that over there. Fred come to me and made a decision pretty much by talking to Pam and talking to Jody to go ahead and put Perkins over there whenever that became an issue. And you send back a reply with state statutes, which nobody understands, nobody knows, nobody looks them up. I looked it up, and I still don't agree with you by reading the statute that you quoted. You quoted 2 statutes. And the one you quoted, I got a copy of it right here, and I still read it as for not-for-profit, and you cannot rent to a business. And the other one you shared was the home rule, which is if the law is, if there's confusion on the law. That law, pretty much the first one you quoted, was pretty much clear to me that it was for non-for-profit. I looked it up. That's the same with the fire territory. These guys don't understand, and that fire territory references a lot of state statutes. And all we hear is, I didn't read it in the I didn't read it in the interlocal. I didn't see where it was a third, and third, or whatever, but it references state statutes. It's never been explained to any of these members up here. They have no clue what these state statutes are, where to look for them at, what they mean, what that section of the interlocal is referencing. But yet, we're gonna sit and we're gonna decide, based on what they're hearing only, they're gonna vote not to go to the court and try to get a judge to interpret that interlocal. And it's just, there's not enough information being shared with the people up here. I've been on the board for about 12 years now, and I was on the fire territory board for 2 or 3 years, and I was on the safety board, and I've been involved with all this, and I've been involved with the attorneys and stuff that talk about this kind of things, and we just ain't getting the information that we need to make a decent decision on any of this stuff. And every time, there's never anybody that wants to talk about anything up here openly. This orange deal's been going on for almost a year. And like I sent this right here, and I'll share it with anybody in this room that wants to see it. There is 13 feet sections or better that I went by section of that, and they have breached contract. And it said right in there, that's termination. They can breach any one part of it, and we can vote to determine, or to terminate them. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody thinks they're doing a great job down there, and to me, I'm seeing liability. Bad for this town. And there's information that was withheld from us that brought this all about here, as my recommendation to terminate, as information that was known clear back in June, and now there's going to be a lawsuit, and we'll probably be named in that also. And there were some other issues that went on down there that could have put us in liability. A lady running off in a car, and the people were down there, and she came clear off 19 at a high rate of speed, hit a rock up over the poles and everything else. If there had been kids down there, they could have ran over them. The people in charge down there was there. They didn't want to call the police. Wrecker come down and moved the car, and they couldn't move the car because it broke the front axle and ripped the transmission pan out. So the car was inoperable, and they had to leave it there for 3 days. I called the county sheriff to have it removed off the property. And they didn't even know anything about it. But those guys did. Now, what the hell would have happened if there would have been a bunch of kids down there and that guy would have come through there? No report, no nothing. Nobody knows what took place, whether it was medical, whether she was drunk, stoned, who knows. But nobody, that's the type of stuff that should have been reported, and it should have been a police report, and we should have been aware of it. But we didn't find anything out about it until later. And everybody thinks they're doing such a great job down there, and they're just breaching this contract. They're creating liabilities. They're destroying our property without approval, and it's okay. But it ain't with me. This fire territory, I sat on that board, and everything I seen sitting down there, it was all crooked. It was pretty much the same thing. The agreement was being violated. We weren't getting the information that we were supposed to. That's been part of that interlocal, and nobody did nothing about it. I was the only one that spoke up. And it ended up on the news and everything else, and then they pulled out of it. You know, I'm not gonna sit back and, you know, I'm supposed to be representing these people in this community and this town and everything else. And things like this just keep going on, and everybody wants to talk about them outside the meeting and send an email here and there that we can't share, or we wanna have any other type of meeting other than a public meeting to where the residents of this community knows what's going on. That ain't getting us nowhere. We're going backwards instead of forwards. Everything that has been on this table since I've been on this board has not been resolved, nothing. And here we are, we're trying to get a fire department going, we have no funds to fund them. We might as well not be wasting these guys' time if we can't fund them and give them a budget to operate off of. And we're still gonna keep giving our money to the township that ripped us off for ALS service. It just don't make a bit of sense to me, and anybody sitting in here that it does, I'd like you to explain it to me. I really would.
If I can address just a couple issues that were brought, there was a lot that was just discussed in there, but I do want to draw your attention to a couple things. When you talk about the email, you're asking why is that an issue? When you have all of the board members upon that, the Public Access Council has determined that that constitutes a meeting. Because it constitutes a meeting, you don't have to be technically asking for an action or a vote. A public action is defined, or council action is defined as receiving information that pertains to the town as well. So if there's an exchange of information which pertains to the town, that's taking a public or official action by this council. And so if you have everybody on there, you've got a quorum, and it's a violation of the public access laws under the open door rules. It's a weird rule, but it's a rule that's in place, and that's the concern that arises out of that. I've heard some talk about the executive sessions and why you have to do that, you know, when we're not in a lawsuit yet. When you strategize for a lawsuit, if you kind of show your cards at public meetings, it's not necessarily an attempt to keep information from your constituents. It's to keep information away from the party that you're going to be fighting against. You want to keep your best argument and your witnesses as close to the vest as possible, because that gives you the best chance to prevail when you get to court. And so those are the reasons why there's a specific exception when, for an executive session for a council or a governmental entity, when it's contemplating either the bringing of a lawsuit or dealing with a lawsuit that you're involved in, because they understand that those planning stages are the strategy parts for what you're going to be doing in the future if you proceed down the road for a lawsuit.
They need to protect privilege, because otherwise then they can ask for all of our information pertaining to the lawsuit and all of our discussions.
And so there's multiple levels that come into play. I can't speak on the Orange contract or some of the other issues that you have here. I can speak to what the rules are for the state as it applies to municipal bodies. And you know, by following those rules, you know, for instance, I heard you talk about why can't we get an audit about the fire territory. Mm-hmm. There's a statute that says the only body that is able to audit municipal dollars and funds is the State Board of Accounts. And any other audit that's performed, the individuals who authorize that audit that municipal funds are used on may be responsible for paying those funds back personally, because the state gave that power specifically to the State Board of Accounts.
Right, and there's details behind that goes clear back to the fire territory, that, like you say, that's something that if we go to lawsuit, if we were, that I will not discuss in here, but yeah, I know some more details about this stuff, like you're saying. You know, to sit up here and say we gotta do this at a public meeting if we wanna vote on going to court.
Well, you do have to.
Right, so that's all I'm saying up here. I'm not talking about the details pertaining to this.
Right, so the final decision, so when you're in executive session, you can't take any final action. So you can discuss it. You can say, here's my reasoning for this. You can lay out your arguments in there. Here's our strengths, here's our weaknesses. And you get everything out there on the table, but you keep that strategy there. And when you come into your open meeting, that's where you take the official action, saying, I move that we proceed with a lawsuit, and then you take the vote on it. And you take the information that you gleaned and learned during that executive session, and you base your decision upon that information. And that's how you take those actions. It's you know, it's kind of, I hear what you're saying. You want to be open and transparent to the constituents you represent, but at the same time, you don't want to be, and you shouldn't be, open and transparent if that's going to hurt your ability to get the best result for the constituents you represent. And that's why that exception is put in there to the statute on that.
Well, let me ask you this. Since we don't want to talk about anything that would pertain to the lawsuit, and we discuss things at executive session, when do you vote on what you're going to have the attorney to proceed with or whatever? Is that going to be one board member and they ain't going to, takes charge and deals with the attorney and no one else knows? Or where do you discuss? I guess in an executive session you can't make a vote, so well, how do you vote on what you want to proceed and how you want to proceed and whatnot if it takes a quorum and to vote?
You vote in the open meeting. So what happens is,
But it's confidential, so we want to keep it quiet, so we don't hurt our chances at the lawsuit. So where do we discuss this stuff that we ain't supposed to be disclosing in a public meeting? If we can't do anything under executive session, we can't take votes or whatnot. Well, you can discuss it all at an executive session. I understand all this, but when do you take the vote if you don't want to throw it out here at a public meeting to vote on it?
You do vote it in the public meeting. So you have the executive, so in the lawsuits that I've been involved with the other municipalities that I represent, when it gets to that point and you're getting to the point where you need to make a decision, you have an executive session before your open meeting. And in that executive session, the points are laid out. And you guys discuss it. You don't take a vote on it, you just receive and you discuss that information. Mm-hmm. You adjourn that executive session, you open your meeting. And then if it is, I would assume that you have it on the agenda that this is going to be decided upon. This is an item for here. And you say, okay, we need to take a vote as to whether or not we're going to proceed with the litigation on this. At that point, some of the municipalities I represent let it open up to the public so that they can ask questions. And as long as it's not a situation in which it's going to disclose something that's going to tip your hand, we discuss some of those things.
Where do you discuss that? Where do you discuss the issues that's going to tip your hand?
If it's going to tip your hand, it's done in executive session.
How to keep voting on
And
it.
if it's not, if the question is a situation in which it's not about strategy and specific information, then you can answer that and discuss it in your open meeting. If it is something that's going to be there, I would assume that your attorney, so I would expect Manny to say, hey, we can't really discuss that part here. We don't want to discuss that part here. And you go like in that process, and then you vote as to whether or not you're going to proceed. Again, is it absolute complete transparency to your constituents? No, it's not. And the laws are set up so that it's not that way. But at the end of the day, they're set up that way so that it is, yes, you're keeping some things quiet, but you're keeping those things quiet to assist you to be in a better position to get the best result for your constituents. It's not sharing information with the people sitting in this room. That's not the concern. It's that information getting out. So if we're talking about this case with the fire territory issue, and it's a township that you're going after, it's getting that information into that township's hands so that their attorney can sit there and say, okay, they're going to come down this route, this is the way we're going to come and strategize and defend it, or try and preemptively resolve that situation so they lose that argument. Those are the kinds of steps that you go through when you have these litigations. They're never easy.
Oh, trust me, I understand.
So, I mean, that's what you run through. And with the budgetary thing, it's not necessarily the budgetary thing. You know, I heard you asking, why can't we just get it in front of the judge? The courts are crowded, and you'll get certain filings. The judge will see your preliminary filings if you file a lawsuit. You may have a pretrial conference where you can tell the judge, well, this is kind of where we are. If it's a position in which you can file a summary judgment motion, so there are no facts that are being disputed, then you can file that and get that in front of the judge. But in most lawsuits, that's not the situation, where there's no facts in dispute. Somebody's going to argue one fact or the other. And summary judgment can be defeated very easily by an affidavit being signed by somebody else saying, no, this is my version of the story. And so what judges will do is you'll walk down this line, you'll go through discovery, you'll get all this information, you'll get your experts, you'll have to disclose who your experts are. They'll have to give you written reports, you have to provide that to the other side, you get to then take the depositions. Then the judge, because when you're ready for a trial, is gonna say, you know what, I'm not ready to hear this yet, so I'm gonna order you to go to mediation. And so now you have to go and you argue your case in front of a mediator, who's gonna separate you guys out, group in one room, group in the other room, and walk back and forth, trying to get to a agreement. And his job or her job is to split the baby.
Right.
Get it to a resolution. And if mediation fails, then you get your chance to go to court.
Right.
So it is a lot of work. The majority of that work is gonna be done up through that mediation stage. You're gonna have your discovery done, you're gonna have all your prep done. But once you get to trial, I mean, you're talking about that entire time from the second that trial starts to when you are done is basically being billed. I mean, I'll tell you right now, talking about being open and honest, the best thing that you can do for a law firm is decide to file a lawsuit. Because that's how we pay our bills and that's how we make our money. But just because it's in our best interest that you file a lawsuit and pay us, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily in the town's best interest. So that's what you really need to think about. We can't, we as attorneys should not be the ones to tell you, you need to file a lawsuit here and I expect you to vote that way. Our job is to get you information, advise you as to the law, how we believe the law will be interpreted on certain issues, give you the weaknesses of your cases and the strength, but more importantly, the weaknesses, so you know what risks you're facing. And then leaving it to you because you're the lucky ones who decided to throw your names on ballots and run for office to make that final decision. I mean, there's so many different things that play into that.
Well, I understand, and this has been talked about, and ever since Manny started here, he was supposed to be an aggressive attorney. Our other attorney, he had to step down because of conflict of interest, because he was representing another entity that was part of the territory. And we had voted, and that this was supposed to be in the process of the lawsuit being started when Manny took over, and it's in the minutes where I was adamant that this was getting done and started and underway. It's right in the minutes of that meeting when Manny took over. I had Robin send them to me. I got the minutes. And for whatever reason, we were all about going on forward with the lawsuit. The council has voted to pursue the lawsuit, and now all of a sudden, everything just kind of fizzled out with nobody, communication and talk and everything. That's my problem is what happened. You know, before it was all, we're ready to roll. We have all the information. We had tons and tons of their information. We requested documents, records. We had the amounts, the dollar amounts, and we sat here and was looking at what all was there.
No, we didn't, that's what happened, because they had agreed to a forensic audit and we could never get that.
They never did that because Chris Miller backed out of that. That's the
Right,
reason, and the territory voted before the territory even went out. We voted as the territory board for an audit, and she was part of it. And in the interlocal right there, it states that all three has to be unanimous vote, and it was. So that was another part.
But we could never get that.
But that was another part that we could have moved forward with the lawsuit, and everybody just buried their head.
But, I mean,
Sorry.
Because we could not get
I thought you were pointing to me, so.
I don't know the history of all this, but I have been involved in legal issues. And one of the things that this gentleman said that you may or may not have ever taken into consideration is whether you are absolutely in the right as a town and as a board, John, it has nothing to do with the law. The law is all about interpretation.
That's exactly right, and that's what I've been trying to get this in front of.
And your attorneys are here to tell you what is in your best interest as to how that law or that contract could be interpreted, and it all depends on who brings the better argument. So you are gambling. I mean, you're throwing the dice.
Oh, I've been in front of this same situation before myself personally. I understand all that. I know that. And, you know, that's what I'm asking. Nobody can understand or interpret the interlocal. Everybody's got a different opinion. That's my point. Get it in front of a judge and let a judge interpret how that thing is to be read, whether it's a third, whether it's tax levy, whatever. If, you know, if we had somebody that was gonna rule on it, such as a judge, as to how that was interpreted, instead of everybody else's opinion, and how everybody around it has a different idea or opinion of it, interpreting it, I say put it in front of the guy that's gonna actually drop the gavel and say, this is it, this is the way it is. That's what I'm
Is
looking
there a
for.
way to just get the interlocal to a judge to interpret without all of the other stuff? And just say, how is this interlocal?
Yes, but it's also a lawsuit.
Is-
And so you file a lawsuit, you ask for a declaratory judgment, saying, Judge, we don't want any damages, we just need you to interpret this this document. And then they'll have an opportunity to counterclaim and say, no, we're owed $12,000. And then you get into the same issue. So, like Jewel said, getting in front, like I've talked about ad nauseam, getting in front of a judge is a lot more complex and costly than just presenting it to him and saying, please tell us how you feel about it.
How many times has that happened, Manny? How many times have you contacted their attorney since you've been with us for the last year and a half? How many times have you talked to their attorney or them down there and requested a meeting or requested our stuff back?
Early on, a lot, weekly.
There we go.
And so the issue is, I have no idea that you voted to file a lawsuit. I wasn't here when you did that. I was hired to try to resurrect the territory. And that's what we worked on for a while. And we got to the point where it was my understanding they was gonna pick up all the equipment, and we got all that resolved. And what we didn't get resolved is how the rest of the money, if there is any money, was gonna get split. And that's where we came to a head. And at that point, we had the same discussions that we've had before, which is, it's your call what you wanna do. You wanna spend money to go after it, because they're not gonna agree. They think you owe them money. And that's where we are.
Well, and that's where you go, opinion, so you need the person that's gonna make the final decision, in my opinion, that's the judge, to determine that.
So to get the interlocal in front of a judge, it's still, I mean,
You file what's called a petition for declaratory interpretation, or a DEC action is the short. And so what that does is saying, Judge, this contract that is in existence is ambiguous, unclear, and we don't have guidance of how to proceed going forward. And then we say, here's our interpretation of what this contract says. And they get to say, here's our interpretation of what this contract says. And so you go through a lot of the stages. Now, you know, with a DEC action, it's you may not go through all of the steps because you're not asking for the damages part of it, unless but what they will have an opportunity to do is petition to essentially turn it into a regular lawsuit. So they file a response to the DEC action and then essentially a counterclaim saying, you know, we know what this contract says, and under this contract, you know, the town of Atlanta owes us $12,000 or whatever it is, and here are the reasons why. And then now you're left defending that, saying, we don't owe that, here's the reasons why we don't owe it. In fact, under our interpretation, so it gets you to the same place, most likely, when there's that much confusion over it, and when there is contention as to who owes who money. Because at the end of the day, usually when you have contracts, it's one person saying, you owe me money, and the other person saying, I don't owe you money, I provided the services that were required. And what I'm gleaning from this is that's not the situation. It's the town of Atlanta saying, you owe us money and this equipment and all this stuff back. And then you have the fire territory saying, no, you owe us money and this stuff over here. And so it's a little bit different than a straightforward, clear contractual dispute. And here's the thing, and you're right, the only way that you're going to get a definitive answer, unless you work out an agreement, is to file an action and to get the judge to make a determination on it. But that's not a cheap way, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what municipalities, I mean, that's the biggest issue that I have with the municipalities I represent is after 2008, when they did those property tax caps and the changes that the state has continually made in their funding mechanisms, there's less and less money that's able to be captured by the local municipalities. You have the caps on the property. They're talking about personal property tax caps on top of that. So they're limiting the ways in which revenue is generated by municipalities.